Getting up and down off the floor as we age is now becoming a life skill, while as a kid, it was something we just took naturally. But in this video, I want to go through exercises that are going to strengthen your hips to allow you to get into more comfortable positions that can be more regarded as a resting position that's going to help you build the strength to be able to get up and down off the floor with ease so that it no longer becomes something you need to worry about. If this is your first time joining the channel, my name is Dan. I'm a mobility specialist with over 24 years of coaching experience. I'll put the list of equipment down in the description for what you're going to need to go through this video. Let's not waste any more time. I want to give you as much value as possible. Now, the first thing we want to go over is, why are your hips tight? What is actually happening within the hip itself that's restricting your movements to get up and down off the floor, or even in some cases, just getting up and down out of a chair? So the first thing we want to look at is your ability to rotate through your hips. So when we think of something like this, we are externally rotating from the top of my leg, so the head of the femur, within my hip socket. How that would relate to something is when we actually think of sitting cross-legged. If we can't rotate our hips, this is not going to be comfortable, and you might actually find yourself sitting really high up. Your inside of your legs, so your adductors, are struggling to lengthen to give you that space to allow you to sit more comfortably. You might even find yourself sitting backwards because you actually can't even rotate up on top of your legs. Now, if we quickly just break down the hip and what it should be able to do, it is a ball socket joint. So we should have the ability to internally rotate as well as externally rotate, so that allow the head of the femur to rotate nice and smoothly within the hip socket. Now, as a priority, we want to look at your ability to actually rotate within the hips, because if you cannot rotate in a ball socket joint, you're already going to be affected in other movements like extension, like flexion. So we want to prioritize the time that we have to give on this, so that we're ensuring that we're really maximizing our opportunity to grow within the body. So let's look into external rotation within the hip. Now, for a lot of us, if we can't get up and down off the floor, we're going to look at how to do this in a standing position. The first thing I recommend is finding something that you can actually balance on. Okay, so whether that's a post, a table, a box. Obviously, I've got a list of equipment here. If you don't have anything at home, you might need to just get crafty. The first thing that I would recommend you do is to take a split stance. Okay, we're going to use the power of our legs to allow us to try and find some rotation through the hip. So you plant the legs, find that bit of balance if you need it. And then the goal here is that we actually want to be rotating the femur and the hip even in a standing position. So I showed you earlier how we did it from a seated position, but for some, this is not going to be achievable. So what do we want to do? Well, as a priority, we want to start to learn how to get a little bit of rotation through the hip. So what I'm actually doing here is planting the foot so the head of the femur stays in the one position, but now my hip has to move. Okay, you might feel a lengthening on the outside of the hip here. Totally fine. Work within a round that feels okay for you. So I take a split stance. I'm looking to reach across as I come back up, and I'm only sitting back as much as I can tolerate that lengthening on my glute there. So on the outside of the hip, you're going to feel this nice long stretch. In terms of a rep range, I generally like to work more on a time for stuff like this, because then you can investigate to see what feels good for you, what can you tolerate, and how much do you want to push yourself. So with this, generally speaking, let's aim for about 60 seconds. Then we would swap over. And just remember, use a post or use something to make you feel balanced, especially if you feel a little bit unstable. Now, the next thing we want to look at is actually our ability to internally rotate. Now, what I recommend, one of the easiest ways to do this is actually to lie on your back. Now, you can set yourself up beside a wall, and what we would look to do is to bring our feet up onto the wall. And all you're going to try to do here is you're going to push into the wall with the heels of your feet, just to give you a little bit of tension. And then we're going to pick one foot. We're going to pull the knee up towards our chest just a little bit so that it removes the foot off the wall. Now the goal is we want to try to internally rotate. So we're actually letting the ankle go out to give us a little bit of rotation through the hip. If this is challenging, what you can do is grab a cushion or a block, and then we place that in between the knees. Now all I want to do is plant my hands on the ground again, just creating a little bit of tension. I remove one of my feet, and then I start to rotate as best I can. If we need to take this up a notch, what you can do is you can actually place a band just around your ankles, which is going to help you just in terms of getting a little bit more resistance, so recruiting more of the tissue of the hip to help with that internal rotation. The next thing we actually want to push on to now is your ability to lengthen the tissue within your hip, okay? For a lot of us, what is actually restricting us when we are sitting in this sort of a position, which is naturally going to help us to gain more mobility in the hip to get up off the floor, is actually your inability to lengthen the inside of your legs. Now, what I recommend you do is this. We bring our feet together and we're going to go 5 steps, okay? The way we do this is we go heels out for 1, toes for 2, 3, 4, and then on that last one, we try and get ourselves in a relatively comfortable position. Before we start to sit down, what I recommend is you note this. We are turning our feet out as much as we can tolerate. We're also stopping the knees from rolling in. So if anything, squeeze your butt, try to pull the knees out as much as possible. Then from there, what I recommend is keep your stomach relatively tight and start to sit down into that position. We can use our hands out in front as a counterbalance just to stop us from falling backwards or falling forwards. Key notes, do not let those knees fall in, okay? Now for this one, again, we're going to look to educate the tissue to be somewhat comfortable in this position. So we're going to hold for 60 seconds. After 60 seconds, get yourself up out of there and just have a little walk around. The more confidence this tissue gets in that lengthened position, the lower and the longer you're going to be able to get down into this position. Okay, so it's really going to help us just to gain a little bit more mobility in and around the hips. Now, what I like to pair with this is your ability to actually recruit the glute tissue. So if you're sitting at a desk all day, it can get very comfortable just being in a relaxed position, gets a little bit tight and weak. We want to help to build a little bit more strength through that. What do I recommend? Bring yourself down onto all fours. This can also be done standing, which I'll show you alongside this. So I'm going to bring my leg out. And what I'm going to do is this. My ankle is set up in the same line as the opposite knee. My hands are set up just below my shoulders. And what I'm going to look to do is push the floor away, take a big deep breath in, and then try to remove this foot from the floor. And then I lower back down. Common mistakes here is this elbow is going to want to bend. We want to keep that nice and locked out. And we also want to try and minimize any kind of rotation from the body. So we lift, we come back down. You should feel a good recruiting of the tissue in this area. Be mindful though, there is a possibility you might feel a little cramping sensation. If you do, just come out, shake it out, try and get back in. The next thing I want to really get into now is actually a strategy on how to actually get off the floor. What I want you to do is I want you to set yourself up in a kind of like a fetal position, right? So we would start on our back, but we do naturally want to roll to one side. You'll notice I've set my knees kind of on top of each other, and then I have my arm just straight out in front of my nipple line. With the opposite hand, I'm going to start to plant that down on the floor. And what this is starting to do is to try and give me a bit of leverage to get me off the floor. Now, what I recommend you do is this. This elbow, I'm going to try to pull it back underneath my shoulder as I create a little bit of momentum to go forward, okay? So I press the hand down. I'm pulling this back towards me. I take a big deep breath in. And then as I start to rotate, so I'm rotating towards that front hand, I'm pushing down as much as I can to bring me into this kind of a position, right? So more like a side plank. Then what I'll do is I'll get whatever leverage I have in my hands to just try and pull me as best I can. So I start here, I pull this arm back, press down, and I bring me into that upright position. From here, I'm going to come onto all fours. So I'm going to try and get up onto my knees. Okay, so I'm still pushing down, up onto my knees, and then I'm going to set myself up onto all fours. From this position, the best thing that you can do is watch. So earlier on, we mentioned around getting good in this nice lengthened position. So this is where it's going to come into play. So what I do is this. I start to put pressure down onto this back foot as best I can, and I start to remove this knee. Then what I want to do is I want to try and use that same glute that we felt in the last exercise to pull the knee up as best I can so that I can start to plant or put pressure down through this leg. Then what I want you to do is this. I want you to press down as best you can. And whilst you're doing that, walk across to that side. So the idea is, if I'm here, I'm using my glute to lift the knee to put pressure on the toes. I'm walking my hands around to get me in a better position to come up off the ground. Then what I do is this. I'm spinning my foot on this knee to bring me into more of a, kind of like I'm on train tracks. There's a gap between my legs. And then I'm going to tuck these back toes just to give me a bit more leverage. If you're really beginner at this, or you're really struggling in this current position, notice that I've set myself up beside a box. That's what's going to allow me to get up into a standing position. Okay. So one option is obviously that I would push through the floor, bring one hand up onto the knee and come into an upright position. If I can't do that, then what I am doing is I'm setting myself onto a box. I'm bringing myself across to the box, and then I'm going to try to get myself into an upright position. The next thing we want to think about is trying to pull the legs towards each other. So by pulling the legs towards each other, it creates tension. Okay, so I'm pulling the legs towards each other, it creates tension. So if again you're struggling with that, you bring your hands onto the box, you push down on the box as best you can, and you try to get this back leg to meet the front leg. Okay, so all the power goes down through this leg, and all the power that comes down through the box, and I try to get this back leg to meet the front leg. A good way of practicing this is actually trying to go as slow as you can down in a negative rep. Okay, so you would start from here, slowly coming down into a negative rep. So to reiterate this as all in one, I would be lying, let's say I'm on my back, I bring one hand out to the side, I roll onto that arm, top hand goes down, then as I push, I try and get up onto the elbow. From here, I push down to roll up onto my knees. I set myself up into a quadrupedal position, so I'm on all fours. I'm now pushing down as I try to use my glute to lift the knee, and I'm trying to walk across to this side. That gets me into a nice, strong, stable position. I tuck the back toes, and then from there, I can put my hand onto my knee, really press down as I bring myself up into this upright position, and then I pull my legs towards each other. I can even press on this knee if I need to get me into that nice upright position. Now, with a lot of this, we just have to appreciate the time that we've neglected this, and then understand that there's a bit of time involved to get us stronger around the hips to make this a little bit more accessible. As you'll notice, we did use a little bit of upper body strength, so adding in some movements specific to that. The biggest problem that most people are making when it does come to flexibility and mobility is just neglecting it or not understanding the process behind it and what's involved to make you the strongest that you can be. The best way to think about flexibility is a range of motion. It's going to allow you to spend the rest of your days out of pain, with more confidence, and having the ability to do movements like this that could actually save your life. If you're looking to understand this a little bit more and you do want a bit of a strategy behind it, then check the description below. I've dropped a free training program for you just to get you started on your journey. I'd also love you to help support this channel by hitting that subscribe button. Drop any comments down below on things that you want to see more of. You're welcome.